edition of Paramount of Politics. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm Shannon Grady, and this is my co-host.
John Cummings, good morning.
And John and I were just discussing the upcoming debates that, again, the Republican National Committee sets these debates for the Republican Party, and the DNC sets them for the Democratic Party. The candidates don't have any say in whether or not they are eligible to attend or when these debates are going to have. The RNC says this is when we're having it, this is where we're having it, and these are the criteria you have to make in order to be invited. Now, I think for this one, John, I think the first one is 1%. You have to have 1%, and you had to have 40,000 individual donations. And we were just talking about, and help me again, John, I keep forgetting his name, the governor.
It's Burgum.
Yeah, that he didn't have the 40,000 individual donations. So, I mean, you tell me what you think about this, but he did it. He basically took the, I don't know. He said to folks, listen, if you'll donate $1, we'll send you a $20 gift certificate. So he was spending $19 to get the 40,000 people to donate so that he could be on the debate stage. Might work out for him. I mean, I think that's probably a better way to spend your money than some of the other things these candidates are doing. But what are your thoughts, John, on the purpose of having these criteria that you have to hit to be
Yeah,
debate?
when you put your name on that line that you're going to run, I think you should pretty much be allowed in a debate with few exceptions. I know back in 2011, getting ready for the 2012 election, I had some interest in Thaddeus McCotter. He was running. He was a congressman from Michigan. And at the time, I think you had to be at 5% in the polls. But here's the problem. They weren't including him in the polls. So if they control who is in the poll and who is not in the poll, how are you supposed to get to a certain percentage in that poll? And he, of course, got left out of the debate, and his candidacy didn't go anywhere. And I had just been at the South New Hampshire Young Republicans straw poll that they did. Great event, something that they should think about doing down here. They had it. It was like a county fair, and every candidate had a booth, like a tent, and you went around and you got a chance to talk to the candidates. It was great. And McCotter tied for second, and then that was it. I mean, he tied for second. He beat several notable people. But having that type of criteria, fundraising and okay, you need to be at this point in the polls. If you have notoriety and you have a good grassroots organization, you have taken the time to file in all the necessary states. Just filing in all the necessary states should be able to get you into the debate. I mean, you don't want everybody and their brother in the debate, and there has to be some sort of cutoff. But I don't know about, if you have a certain amount of donations, because you just saw somebody work their way around that. And again, the poll thing is really important. But like I said, if they're not going to include you in certain polls, well, how are you supposed to get to 5% in the poll if they're not asking people if they know about you or not? I think there's better ways to figure that out. And,
Well, I
40,000
like your
donations.
suggestion that if you've gotten onto the ballot. Now,
Get
I
on the ballot.
think, let's say the first, I don't know, 10 debate. I mean, the first 10 states in the primary, you have to already gotten on those first 10
Yeah, get on the
ballots. If you're
ballot.
not on the first 10, then you shouldn't be allowed to come, because I just looked it up, and this is obviously including independents and everything else. There's like over 800 candidates, so we obviously can't
Right,
have
of
them
course.
all. And then, just some of the more well-known candidates. You got Doug Burgum, Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis, Larry Elder, Nikki Haley, Will Hurd, Asa Hutchinson, Mike Pence, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, Corey Stapleton, Francis Suarez, that's the mayor out of Miami, and of course Donald Trump. Now, I think it's fair to say that the representative Will Hurd out of Texas has not a snowball's chance in hell. And it looks like, based on the current list of candidates, that Mike Pence and Asa Hutchinson will not be admitted to the campaign debate funds.
They're not going to
They
get it.
don't meet any of the metrics. And I basically said, I felt like Mike Pence's entire campaign was on life support after he got done, or not, after Charlie Kirk got done with him with his. That's not my concern. But if it was on life support, it flatlined when he made the statements he did about President Trump with the indictment, saying that any man who thinks the Constitution is before him does not deserve to be president. I listen. again, I've not hidden this fact. I'm supporting Ron DeSantis, but there's no way in holy you know what that Donald Trump thinks that he's before the Constitution, and there's no way you survive any kind of Republican nomination process if you are attacking the man who is being attacked by. I mean, God, how many indictments is this? This is absurd. It is.
Well,
It's cartoonish
yeah, I saw
at this
one
point.
saw a great joke yesterday was and I think it was Bobby Jindal, former governor of Louisiana, who said Trump needs one more indictment and he'll secure the nomination. And that's pretty
He
much
gets a
where.
free toaster.
Oh yeah, that's it. And he's in. And you know what Pence has done? I mean, he's done. He sealed his fate with Tucker or whoever that was.
Way done.
He sealed his fate. He was probably done before that. He's never been particularly popular. I think that President Trump originally brought him in because he thought he would be a good nuts and bolts guy and a loyal guy. You know, he runs around all the time, and you know he's a man of very strong faith and everything. Yet here he is, pretty much stabbing everybody in the back. But that's neither here nor there. I didn't think he was going to get anywhere anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's toast. Asa Hutchinson's the same thing. You know, people aren't looking for that right now. They're not looking for that. They're looking for, I think, probably the person who's handled the issue best is, out of all the Republican candidates when it comes to President Trump, is Vivek Ramaswamy. He just comes out and says,
Yeah, I
look,
agree.
what's going on here is awful, and we should all stand up and say this has to stop. And then if we want to candidate, you know, if we want to campaign amongst each other, that's fine. But everybody has to make that stance. To stand there and say that President Trump is anti-constitution when he is the one having his rights violated consistently, all you have to do, you don't have to be a lawyer to figure out that indictment yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever it came down.
Oh my God.
When you look at
It's
that and
absurd.
see the fact that all it is about is, one, it's about free speech. Guess what?
Yes.
Even if the president didn't think he won, and I think that he still thinks he won, even if you could prove that he
And
didn't
he
think he
has
won,
the right to think
he
that.
absolutely. Hillary, we posted yesterday. We posted 24 minutes of Democrats saying that the elections were stolen from them, led off by Hillary Clinton, constantly still harping on the fact that she won in 2016 and it was stolen from her. So you can say that all you want.
Russian interference.
Right, all of it. And we now know that, you know, what we know about that first impeachment. That entire thing should be expunged from the record.
Yes.
It was all based on lies, and they all knew it. And they're the ones that constructed the whole scenario. Just I mean, beyond outrageous. But then the other thing about that indictment is, not only did President Trump have his First Amendment rights violated, his Sixth Amendment right to counsel, because what they did was they did unindicted co-conspirators who are the attorneys, President Trump's attorneys. So you're
all
saying
his
that
counsel.
right? So we're going to indict his counsel too. So he can't have any count. What are you kidding me? I mean, every lawyer that you see that's legitimate. I mean, starting with Professor Dershowitz, because he's my barometer, because he's a big liberal, and he calls balls and strikes. Said it was one of the worst documents he's ever seen, ever. And they're just going to keep doing this until people say, hey, you know, we can't vote for this guy. But you know what? It's not work. It's not going to work. I think it has the reverse effect. And I've said that from the beginning. If they just would have said back in 2020, okay, you know what? We beat them this time, beat them in quotes. Now just let him go away. Leave him alone. Stop bringing attention to the guy. And guess what? They beat him up for the next 2.5 years while he's out of office. And where is he now?
They have Trump derangement syndrome. They cannot help themselves. They cannot help. It is a mental condition. They can't help themselves.
They have anybody who's not Democratic.
Let me pause this right there real quick, because I feel bad that I didn't start the show with this, because I feel like this is certainly important. In Easley, South Carolina, yesterday we did lose an officer, a man in blue. A young man by the name of Matthew Hare was, you know, working, and he got a call that there was a person in mental distress who apparently was attempting to commit suicide via train. And as I understand it, he and another officer responded. They were attempting to pry her away from the train tracks, and they did manage to free her, you know, get her out of the way. But unfortunately, Officer Hare was not able to get out of the way of the train in time, and so he lost his life. And so I just want to say, you know, oh my gosh, my heart goes out. I've worn the uniform, you've worn the uniform, and folks, it's you know, he's a very young man, and you don't think when you get up that morning, you go into work that's going to be your last day on the job. So I just thank him from the bottom of my heart for his willingness to serve and for his duty to our state and to the town and the people of Easley. His family, I am so, so sorry for your loss. And I hope that folks recognize again, with all the attacks that are being thrown at that police officers, that they understand these men and women literally are willing to lay down their lives for us. And so we need to remember that and show some respect to the men and women that wear the badges that are designed to protect and serve. So again, Easley Police Officer Matthew Hare, sir, we thank you for your service. And unfortunately, he did make the ultimate sacrifice with his end of watch being yesterday, August 2nd.
Yeah, and obviously I have the same feelings. Too much going on in my head when I hear stories like that, just from personal. I'm not going to make this personal, but when you have people like that, and I served with many, everybody, in fact, when you put your life on the line, serve people that you don't know,
Yeah.
you have to have a true faith in something larger than you. You know that it's not about you.
Right.
And that's a testament to this country, that we produce so many people that are willing to put their lives on the line to defend, one, an ideal, which is, this country's character, and two, to put your life on the line to defend people that you don't know. It's one thing to, to sacrifice your life for a friend or a loved one. Obviously we would all do that, but to go out there on a daily basis, knowing that you might not come back, and you're doing that to defend the rights and the safety of people that you've never met, says so much about your character. And you know exactly where that person ends up, at the right hand of God. And that's where you
Yes.
belong. When you do
Yep.
something like that, that's where you belong, and that's where you end up. And the fact that there are so many people that are still willing to do that in this nation, in spite of the fact that police are under attack from all sides, it seems.
Mhm.
The fact that there are still people that are willing to do that, that the greater good is more important than their own lives. It still says a lot about this country and the type of people that we are capable of producing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, my hat's off. My hearts go out to the family of Matthew Hare, and obviously the officers there in Easley, South Carolina. Kind of staying on the same lane with police and law enforcement. We have some really positive news to report based on the recent data that's come out from our prison system here in South Carolina. Now, again, John worked in law enforcement, and I did too. Just briefly, John certainly had many more years than I did. But recidivism, which is when a person goes into jail, they come out, they commit another crime, and they return, has typically been significantly higher than we would like. And in South Carolina, up until 10 years ago, it was around a third, so about 33% of everyone who went into prison ended up coming back into prison. And so South Carolina is already, I didn't even know this myself, full disclosure, I found this out yesterday reading the articles. I was like, wow. South Carolina is currently the lowest state, has the lowest recidivism of any state in the union at 17%, which is pretty remarkable. But they have partnered with another group that is going to hopefully bring that number down even lower, and I'm all for it. The program is designed to basically, essentially, it's like a halfway house, but it's actually set up for the inmates to go into 18 months prior to their being released from prison. They go in, they get education, they get mental health if necessary, they get drug freedom from any addictions they may have. And folks, if you don't know this, a lot of times while you're in prison, you can get access to drugs pretty much just like you can on the streets. I hate to say that, but that is, I think John would agree with me, that is something that's an ugly fact that people don't realize. But anyway, they help you through all of that. So in that 18-month process, it's almost like it's like the halfway house in the big house to keep you from having to what am I going to do when I get out? What's my career going to be? What's my job? So they do on the job training, all these things, and I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. So as I understand, the first place they're going to open up is going to be in the Greenville-Spartanburg area, because they said 1 out of 5 inmates when they get out of prison in South Carolina, that's where they move to, the Greenville-Spartanburg area. So they're going to put it there to try to have the necessary skills available for these inmates to get back on their feet and be contributing citizens to society. So I'm all for it. I think it's great. John, what would you say recidivism was like in New York
Uh,
when you were
I
working?
I don't even know the number, but I know it's extremely high. It's extremely high. And to be truth be told, now nobody stays anyway. You just go in, you go out.
Yeah, well, there is that.
So that's another part of it completely. I don't even want to get into that discussion. But as far as having a low recidivism rate, kudos to South Carolina on that for sure. And the way it was explained to me was, in New York they call it the Department of Corrections. Well,
Right.
they call it
Right.
corrections because they want to correct your behavior. It's not called the Department of Punishment. Okay,
Right.
if you want to punish somebody, we get that. You're accountable, sure. But what can we do, we the people, through our elected representatives? What can we do to make sure that that person comes out and can become a positive member of society? And the way you do that is you find out that so many of these people have never had a chance. They have no background. Their education is very poor at best,
Mhm.
and to give them the skills to go out and cope with life on life's terms is what
Right.
they need to do, and that's what they need to get. So corrective behavior is a good thing. Whether you send them to trade school, have them at trade school, or whether they want to go to college, get their associates, whatever they're interested in, as long as they have a marketable skill, that's the first step when you get out. Is have that marketable skill so you go out and get a job. We also, they must be doing a good job of informing people in South Carolina, particularly business owners or whatever, that
Mhm.
it's a good thing to give someone like this a chance, because there are
Absolutely.
very many people who are very hesitant to hire someone who is in the jail system. But when you look at so many of these young men, and look, let's face it, mostly is young men. When when you come out, you need to have some skills, and if you had no skills going in, your
Right.
chances are. But somebody needs to give these
Yeah, because
people
the
a
skills
chance.
you learn in the jail are not skills we want you to
Right, and
have.
so they're really ill-equipped when they come out. So it's super important that we get people this. And I've heard critics say, "Well, you're paying for free college for criminals," and I understand that there's a lot of us that struggle to pay college, and our kids struggle to pay college. But in the long term, what would it cost you to have this same person in and out of jail for 40, 50, 60 years, committing crimes,
Exactly.
legal costs that we, the government, we, the people, pay
Or
anyway
just
to the
housing
government?
and feeding and
Yeah,
clothing them.
all of it, and the appeals, and like I said, you're paying for the attorneys, you're paying for all of it. In the long term, it's much better for everybody if you keep the recidivism rate low, and you do that by corrective behavior, and hopefully, like you said, this partnership will drive it down even further, and that's something that the state should be very proud of.
Yeah. I was happy to see that, and I agree with you 100%. And I think part of that comes from our background in education as well. We don't give up on people. I mean, I had plenty of students as a high school teacher that would come to me and other teachers and say, "Oh, hey, that kid's a lost cause." I don't believe that, because you know what? I was a lost cause, and but for the grace of God, I'd still be a lost cause. So I believe if God can forgive me, and I can be renewed and redeemed, anybody can. So that's kind of my thought for that. But I will say this: you are absolutely correct. It is a corrections facility, but it's also a necessary tool. And I would like to think that in some ways it is a roadblock to people committing crime because they don't want to go to prison. And to that end, you and I have talked extensively about the fentanyl bill, and it finally passed yesterday and was signed, and everything's good. It's all golden. But even before it passed, there was a gentleman in Camden, South Carolina, who was arrested for trafficking fentanyl, which means he had a significant amount of the fentanyl drug. And during the course of the investigation, the questioning, he admitted to the officers that he had given the drugs to a friend of his who had subsequently died from a fentanyl overdose. Now, he alleged that he had, um, a syringe. He first injected himself, and then he gave the syringe to his friend. His friend injected the rest of the solution into his body, and then collapsed and became non-responsive. They drug him down the hall and knocked on all the different doors of and tried to get somebody to help resuscitate him. They weren't able to do that, so they fled the scene. So, because of his own admittance, he was charged with murder, and yesterday he was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison because of the overdose death that was due to the fentanyl. So they're really starting to crack down on this, and I'm happy to see this, because fentanyl I don't know what programs you folks listen to. I don't know who you listen to, but I'm telling you right now, you need to listen to Dan Bongino. You need to listen to Glenn Beck. You need to listen to Ben Shapiro. You need to listen to the War Room. These are really good programs that are going to shed some light on what's going on. And, Dan talked yesterday about the fact that the China, and again, I might be confused. It's either Dan or it was Glenn. One of those two groups talked about the fact that the Chinese had a plan for how they were going to basically go to war with America. They've been at war with us for decades now. And one of the things they talked about was drugs. They were going to push drugs into our nation that would subvert our young people. And my goodness, I mean, fentanyl is just one of them, but it is certainly the most lethal of the drugs that are on the street right now. And it's coming from China, folks. I think it's 97% of all traceable fentanyl originates from China. 97%. That is, and we're losing somewhere around 100,000 young people between the ages of 15 and 45 every year. Now, John, I mean, if there was a terrorist attack every year that took 100,000 Americans, how long do you think we'd wait before our military struck back?
Yeah, and the Chinese government is working directly with the Mexican drug cartels, and the border is open, and they know it. And that's one of the reasons why you have the hearings up on Capitol Hill, and they want to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, and these are people that should have been out already. Should have been out already. I mean, they're not upholding the Constitution. They're just doing what they want. And we're not a nation without a border. We're just not. And the border, for all the good work of the Border Patrol and local law enforcement on the border, they can't keep up with this. You have tens of thousands of people coming in every day, and again, we'll harp on this point, and we should. These are not people from Central America. These are not people from Mexico. These are not people from South America. Now you're into a lot of countries where the people is, and I was going to say that there's a significant amount of people that are coming in, their military age people from China. This is all orchestrated. They crafted this plan for years and
decades.
That's what you're right. And they were just waiting for the right time. And the right time is now because they have a compromised partner in the White House. Simple as that.
Right. And again, gosh, forgive me, folks, because I do listen to all these podcasts throughout the day. That's kind of what I do when I'm at my store. I have it playing in the background. As I comes in, I turn it off, but I listen to that throughout the day. And one of the things they said was that in 91, when we did the Operation Desert Storm, and we went in very quickly into Kuwait, and it was like, I mean, that was over and done with in like 2 weeks, we're done. And he made the point that the Chinese went, whoa, that went way too fast. We better get ready, because we can't go into the United States and expect to just run through the country with a military that's capable of doing this. So that's when they really kind of put into the works. Because I mean, prior to that, we certainly had heroin, we had meth, and some other things that were out there, some illicit
Crack
drugs.
was the big thing, yeah.
But we didn't have anything like fentanyl in the 90s. And I might be wrong on this, but I believe fentanyl is 1,000 times more lethal than heroin.
It depends on the dose, yeah, but it depends on the dose, but yeah, certainly. And look, you can call people conspiracy theorists, do what you want, but the numbers show the amount of young people who have been killed by fentanyl. We know where the drug comes from. And we know how many young people died because of COVID. We know where that came from. And we know how many people, at least we suspect how many people have died from the vaccine or have had cardiac arrhythmia because of that vaccine, which was in response to COVID. I mean, if you don't see that this is all part of a plan, I don't know what to tell you. And the way we respond is to leave the border open. That's how we respond. To allow China to do whatever they want, fly a spy balloon over and say, yeah, let it go across 5,000 miles and then shoot it down. Yeah, I mean, so you see what the approach is, and the Chinese waited for the right time and they got it.
Well, and they also noted, and I mentioned this before as well, I watched a gentleman talk about the fact that when Trump was in office, we were getting the major, I can't think what you call them, it's the towers, the really large towers that help handle our electric grid. And we had gotten in like 400 of those were directly from China, because the particular type of steel that you need, China has done a very good job of locking down a lot of the the metals and
Right.
minerals and other things that you need. There, I mean, folks, if you just step back and looked at it, the pieces are coming together, and it's clear China has a plan, and it is not one that leaves us at the top. But anyway, so the Trump administration said, okay, let's take one of these towers and let's just check it. Let's see what's up with this. So they did. And guess what they found? They found a latent switch in there that the Chinese had planted that actually could be remotely flipped from China to turn off the electricity going into that particular unit. Now there's 400 of those in the country at that time. So Trump rightly said, "That's it. We're not taking any more of these things to the from China. We're going to start trying to figure out how we can make those in the United States." Now, what's really interesting is that this gentleman went on to explain that those are so significant that it only requires 9 of those to be shut down to destroy the entire grid in the United States. The whole grid goes down. So there's 400 in the country. Now, on day 1, Joseph Biden comes into office and he says, we don't, I don't believe that nonsense. And there's already 100 more in the country. So there's over 500 of those in the country now. And the Chinese are just sitting here waiting for it's there. The plan is there. I don't know what day they're going to implement it, but Dan has been harping on this, and he's like, listen, they're planning to do this, and you better be prepared. You better have your water. You better have your food. You better have your supplies, because when this crap hits the fan, it's too late to react then. And so, they're gonna weaken us with, again, age 15 to 45, which happens to be, what age is that, John?
Yeah, military age.
Yeah, the fighting age. They're taking that out, and it is predominantly. Can anybody guess? Is it males or females? It's predominantly males. There are women, young kids females being killed as well, but it is predominantly a male problem. So, and unfortunately, I've mentioned this before. I lost my cousin to this poisoning, and then a good friend of mine from high school lost her son to it. So I know people directly who succumb to this poison. So this is not one of those. And if you don't know somebody, don't wait. It won't be long. You will, because at 100,000 people being killed a year, there's no way that you're going to go very long without knowing somebody that's affected by this drug. So the Chinese are putting, they've got the drugs, they've got the COVID, and as I understand it, they uncovered in one of these labs that they were trying to figure out a way to put COVID in animals so the animals could then be released and help spread the disease. Kind of like the rats were the ones that were, well, it's really the fleas on the rats, but were responsible for the plague being spread as widely. So, folks, this is a serious moment in our history, and you need to be paying attention and just don't have your head in the sand and just think like, I ain't got to worry about that kind of stuff. I'm here in South Carolina and everything's great, and we got a Republican state, sorta.
Yeah.
No, we have major problems.
Yeah, and then you had documents produced up on Capitol Hill the other day that showed that the Biden family looks like they took $3 million, at least in one instance, from the CCP, from the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, John, you're making that up.
$3 million. And if that information is legitimate and they can back it up and they have all the proof, why is Joe Biden on vacation? He should be on Capitol Hill. I don't, I'm almost to the point where I said this on Tuesday. Right now, impeachment it fails us because the Democrats bastardized the process, for one.
Yep.
With those bogus impeachments that they just put us through. But now you're in a position where it looks like our leader is compromised. I mean, it certainly looks that way. Well, this whole process right now, what's going on up there, the hearings, and now we're off 6 weeks. It's not enough. It's just not enough. It's not quick enough. And these people, all of them, the president, Mayorkas, they have to be brought to account now. We don't have time. We just don't have time to allow this person, as it looks like Joe Biden. We do not have the time to allow him to stay at the helm. Now, I know at the helm is a relative term because I don't know how much of it he's steering and how much of it is being done on automatic pilot and who's ever programming that. But this response isn't quick enough. It's just not quick enough. It's too slow. And what I strongly suggest, and I heard Matt Gaetz about, they need to bring Congress back now. We don't have 6 weeks. We do not have 6 weeks. They need to bring these people back now. You need to get the subpoena machine out there. You need to start dragging people up to Capitol Hill. And if they're not going to testify or they're going to lie in court, the list of people who have lied to Congress is endless. We need to start locking these people up. And that's what we, the people, want. And, we're to the point now where, nobody believes in the process. Nobody believes in anything that's going on in Washington, D.C. Nobody believes in the election process. Saw a poll yesterday.
Right. And that's dangerous.
69% of Republicans who voted in the 2020 election, 2020 election, 69% of Republicans believe that there was massive fraud in the election. Yeah. 69%. So who's going to vote? We're in a spot that I never, ever, ever thought that we would be in. And this is no time for Congress to go on vacation. Now people say, oh, it's a good thing when Congress is off because they don't do anything. Well, right now we need them to do something. We actually need them to do something. And they took off. And I think that Speaker McCarthy needs to bring the House right back. Bring them back. You could do it out of vacation, $175,000 a year and all the perks that come with it. You could do it out of vacation. Sorry about that. Get back to Washington, crank it up, and let's get to the bottom of this as quickly as we can, because they're going to drag this. They're going to drag this out as long as they can through the next election, and then you know what'll happen? Nothing will change, and then we're going to end up with a massive war in Europe. We're going to end up with a problem with Taiwan. And we do not have the military to do that right now. We could go on and on and on with this, but I would call on Speaker McCarthy to call the House of Representatives right back. Call them all back, all of them.
Yeah. Well, kind of tying in national news with local or state news, I kind of want to read this to you. Attorney General Alan Wilson, that is the South Carolina Attorney General, has joined with 4 other states to write a letter to President Joe Biden's U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. And this is over Hunter Biden's plea deal and the quote unquote unusual treatment leading to that agreement. I want to read you what they said. It says, it doesn't matter your last name, your position in life, or your political connections. No one is above the law. Hunter Biden should be no different, said Attorney General Alan Wilson. The circumstances surrounding Hunter Biden's plea deal are suspect, and I'm glad the judge rejected the agreement at sentencing this morning. The American people deserve answers, and while these are federal charges, I'm going to do all I can to find the truth and restore trust in the justice system. That's, and he's joined with Louisiana, Florida, Iowa, and Mississippi joined on that letter. So I'm happy to see that, because I think you and I talked about the fact that since things are not progressing, because Merrick Garland is terrible and he ought to be gone too, since things are not being done at the federal level, it is time for the state's attorney generals to step up and say, okay, we're going to take action. And yesterday I watched, I think it was yesterday. Yes, yesterday. I listened to Tracy Beans Diaz, and I'd absolutely listen. You need to go over there, Dark to Light, Uncover DC. You need to watch that, because she had the attorney, the prosecutor or the attorney general from Mississippi, who is, really pursuing some of this.
In Missouri? The one in Missouri?
Yes.
Yeah, Missouri, right. Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and it was really good. It was a great interview. I was very, very impressed. And so just good information. So some of the states are stepping up, but we need more. It can't just be 4. There should be, I think, what do we have, 26, 27 red states? There ought to be, every one of them should be signed, and the Democratic states should be signed onto this. This is absurd, absolutely absurd. And I'll go one step further, kind of flip-flopping back here real quickly. What does it say about our nation that there is even a chance that we could have a president elected who is in jail when he's elected?
Yeah. Well,
because if the Democrats have their way, they're going to put Trump in jail, but that does not mean he can't run for president, folks. So he could run for president, win the election, and then pardon himself from jail.
Well, it leads you right to the point what I just said, is that people, we're in that position because people believe the system is broken. They know the system is broken. It is broken. Yeah. And we have this bi-level, Justice Department. They're going to treat people differently based on whether they have an R or a D in front of their name, or whether or not they're, part of the swamp or not. I hate that term, but whatever it is.
Yeah.
But people know that this system is broken, and people know the fact that we're even speaking about a person running for president, like you said, from jail and winning, tells you that it looks like a majority of the people realize that it's all bogus. Otherwise,
Yep.
they wouldn't vote for him. And not only
Yep.
that, but his numbers amongst groups of people who have never historically voted Republican is way up, way up. And that's because now they're saying they look at Trump and they go, well, look, they're all after him. He's like us because they're all after us. And they really turned it into an us against them, but they think they've gone too far. And they think that they're stacking the deck, and they're stacking it in the opposite direction. But we're in a terrible place. All you need to know is exactly what you just said, Shannon, is that we possibly could have someone run from jail and win. And that tells you that the system's broken. It's
Yes.
broken. People don't trust. They know that this is all political and that it has nothing to do with justice, especially when you look at what's going on with the Bidens and nothing's happening on that end. And then you have President Trump, his house being raided. I mean, think about the Mar-a-Lago raid compared to going through Biden's garage. I mean, just the juxtaposition of those two is enough
Yeah.
for anybody to go, oh, wait a minute. You know,
Yeah,
here's
he
my
wasn't even president when he took those
right.
documents.
Here's my right. He was never in a
He had
position where he
zero right to
could
them.
right. And he had boxes and boxes and boxes of documents in an open garage next to his Corvette. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I gotta be honest with you. I've said this many, many times, but if they convict Trump,
Oh, in
if
Washington,
there
they
are
will.
not people pouring into the streets, pitchforks in hand, our country's lost.
Yeah, and
Our
that's
country's
what,
lost.
but that's what ultimately that's what they want. That's what they
It
want.
is, but that's what they should get.
And
That's what they should get. The military should say, nope, we're not letting this happen. We're not going to become
that's
a banana
I
republic.
always
We're stopping
and
this.
that's why when President Obama got in there, they started to deconstruct the military from the top down. They got all the strong leaders out. You have all of these woke generals
Millie,
now. I mean, I'm
put
not
those
talking about the the
pieces of
enlisted
garbage
personnel.
in.
I'm talking about the people. They weeded out the strong people, and they have all what's left over. But the thing I always point to when it comes to this insurrection and January 6th and all of that, and Trump, 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 Trump. I always look people right in the eye and I say, if Donald J. Trump was planning an insurrection, you think it would look like that? You
No,
think it would? You think
absolutely
it
not.
would have? For most part, look, there's a lot of people who were there. It was almost like they were tourists. There was a
I
lot of
was there.
there was a lot of grandmas there. There was, I mean, we saw what it was. There were people planted in the crowd to get people riled up. Are there people that are stupid and get riled up along with them? Yes,
Sure.
that happens at every function like that. Did it get out of control in some cases? Very much so. Yes,
Yeah.
but believe me, if Donald J. Trump was planning an insurrection and we the people were in on it, it wouldn't have looked like that. And two, guess what? Would have been successful.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the worst insurrections ever because nobody was
Oh,
armed. So
please.
I'm like,
Yeah. I mean, come on.
how you
Just
gonna overthrow the government? You're not armed. That doesn't make any
the whole
sense.
idea. And then yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, the Tucker, there was finally somebody got a copy. I think Raheem Kassam over at National Pulse got a copy of an interview that Tucker had done for Fox Nation with the guy who was the chief of the Capitol Police. And it came out last night because I guess Raheem got a hold of it and posted it on National Pulse. And I urge everybody to go back and watch that interview. He said, this is the chief of the Capitol Police, said it was a setup.
Yeah.
He said it was an absolute setup. And I remember watching that day as someone who has a law enforcement background and I worked in crowd control. I did, even when I got
You
out of
don't
the police
remove the
department.
barriers.
No, I did private security for events. I mean, big events too. And I'm watching this. I'm going, where are the police? Where's the National Guard? Why are they opening doors? Who's moving the gate? I had all the same questions. And this is, play by play when I'm watching it live. But for the Capitol Police chief to come out and say that he thought it was a setup, the fact that they never took Speaker Pelosi and they never took President Trump up on adding the 20,000 National Guard.
Yep.
The Mayor Bowser said the same thing. And they just basically allowed that to happen because they wanted it to happen. And when you have the chief of police come out and say that, and now, of course, they're going to squash that. And also, look, that's why Tucker Carlson's no longer on Fox. Because they had that. They had that in the can, and who knows what else
he's doing great on Twitter, X, or whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, his interviews are. He had Devin Archer on last night. It was a two-parter.
Yeah,
and I knew that was coming because when he had Tony Bobulinski, I'm waiting for Tony Bobulinski to get called up to up to
Yeah,
Congress
I
because
don't understand why he has already been called. Like,
Tony's
wow,
got and Tony has the receipts.
he has the goods.
He
Yeah,
has
yeah,
he has the receipts, and he's a pretty look. Let's face it, they try to tear down his background, but it's pretty tough.
yeah. Well, kind of bringing this back around to the Palmetto State again, we see our justice system literally coming apart before our very eyes, and we think to ourselves, how does this happen? How does justice go so far off the rails? And I harp on this all the time. And I had somebody, I don't know who it was, one of those folks that love us so much, the trolls, jumped on and said, "Oh, it has nothing to do with local. All politics are not local." I'm like, well, that's because you're not informed. All politics are absolutely local. So to that end, if you want to know how things start off jumping off the rails, you have to look no further than right here in South Carolina with our own justice system and our own Senate, South Carolina Senate, to see that we have problems. Turns out, David Pascoe, who was one of the first solicitor for South Carolina, has been doing an investigation, and he uncovered about $200,000 in dark money. Now, you might say, "Well, that's not a lot of money, Shannon." Well, it's not in a federal sense, but in a state race, that is a lot of money.
Yeah, local election, that's good
So,
money. Yeah.
yeah, they had a conservative who held the position of the chairman of the judiciary from 1992 until 2017. At which point in time, the gentleman who was the president of the South Carolina Trial Lawyers Association was none other than, can you guess, John?
Alex Murdaugh.
Alex Murdaugh. Ding, 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 ding. And why does his name ring a bell? Well, because he's in prison right now for having murdered his wife and his son. Plus, he embezzled, stole, whatever you want to call it, millions upon millions of dollars from his clients and from the firms where he worked. So, Mr. Murdaugh, who has a stellar record, as we noted, was a president of the Trial Lawyers Association, and he helped to get $200,000 in dark money. And what we mean by dark money is it's not traceable. We can't figure out where it came from. This dark money just appeared out of thin air. Poof, there it was. And they used this $200,000 to defeat the long-term congressional, senator, and they replaced him with a liberal, Rex Reitner, I think is his last name. And in doing that, they freed up the position of chairman of the judiciary. And they being Alex Murdaugh and the rest of the trial lawyers, wanted to have someone who was liberal to be on the judiciary. So they selected none other than Senator Luke Rankin. And what's interesting about Senator Luke Rankin is that he is a lifelong Democrat. He did not cross over to the Republican Party until they redrew the district lines, and he realized he couldn't win anymore because there were more Republicans in his new district than there were Democrats. So ominous dominus, poof, he's now a Republican. Only he's not. He literally is a definition of Republican in name only. He is a Democrat. So they set him up to be the chairman of the judiciary. And again, folks, we talked about this multiple times. That is the individual who helps to select our justices, the judges, and so on and so forth across the state of South Carolina, as well as a myriad of other really important things, determining which bills meet the legal litmus test and which ones are constitutional, which ones are not. This is part of his job. So I would prefer to have someone who is a conservative, a constitutionalist, and, by golly, an actual Republican to be the chairman of that particular committee. So it is imperative that if we want to see things change in the state of South Carolina, that we get rid of anybody connected to this dark money. So that means Luke Rankin has got to go. He has got to go. Here in Horry County, we have better options. My son, who is soon to be 16, would be a better option, and he doesn't have a law degree than Luke Rankin, because at least he's smart enough that he would know to reflect back on the Constitution and not subvert it in the way that Senator Rankin has done. So, what are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to, address the elephant in the room, which is the fact that we still have our legislature picking judges. That's got to go. We have to go back to the other way we the people elect the judges and not have it done in some backroom deal. The other thing is, I would urge anybody. Obviously, Alex Murdaugh got all the attention in that trial, not just because of the harshness of the act, but because
Right.
of the fact that he was so politically well known in South Carolina. I
Mhm.
mean, this is a powerful family for 100 years
Right.
and very politically active. What I think should happen is that anybody who is elected to public office that took money, whether directly or indirectly, from the Murdaughs, and who knows where he got his money from, because we know he embezzled
Right.
enough of it.
Yep.
Anybody who's in that position needs to return that money, at least to try to get it back to the families of people who were wronged by Alex Murdaugh.
Right.
Sure, there's many cases, civil
Like the
cases
sons
that
of
are
the
going on in that
housekeeper who
regard.
was killed.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And if you took money, whether directly or indirectly, from that, and look, I ran for office, you ran for office, it's pretty easy to have money come in that you're not sure.
Right.
It came through somebody, who knows? But if they can determine, and I would urge everybody to go back and look. Might it be
Well, I
costly
can
for
tell you
you in your
one guy who
campaign? Yeah,
absolutely got money, and I actually messaged him and said, "You need to return the money." And that is our own Congressman Russell Fry. He received money from Murdaugh when he was running for State House, and I just noted that you really ought to return that money. And I was blown off. I didn't get any
yeah.
response.
And again, it's quite possible that a lot, and I'm not giving anybody a pass, but I think everybody needs to look back at their records and say, hey, you know
Governor
what?
McMaster got money from him. He
Sure.
got the most.
Well, he was a political major, and that's why it was such a big story. Look, I hate to say this, there are murder cases all over the country like that, but this was an attractive story because of who Alex Murdaugh was and is.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that has any sort of money that comes from that family, that you need to return that money. And that's why I appreciate a guy like, not to go back to the national, but when you watch, I like Matt Gaetz. I follow Matt Gaetz a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I like Matt Gaetz is the only member of the House of Representatives that doesn't take money from special interests. He's the only one. Everybody else gets some special interest money. Everybody else gets some special. And you really have to be careful with that. And at least that way, and I understand his point, but if you think about it from a bookkeeping standpoint, boy, it's a lot easier to run your campaign. You know where your money came from. You know exactly where your money came from. You have a list of who donated, who they are, where they live, and that's it. None of this dark money, none of these super PACs. The only PAC money that went to my campaign when I ran was Mike Huckabee's pro-life PAC sent me $500. That was it. That was it. So, and that one I was like, okay, you know what? That's a pro-life, Mike Huckabee pro-life PAC, and I was a pro-life candidate. Okay. But that was the only money we got. But can you imagine there isn't one other person in Matt Gaetz in the House of Representatives that doesn't take special interest money? So that's the easy way out of it, is just to get rid of all of that. And I know that was a Supreme Court case, and I know all about that with the campaign, McCain-Feingold and all that, saying that, money is free speech and you can spend the money where you want. But you're right. That money that came from Murdaugh, everybody needs to look at their books and say, hey, you know what? We got to return this.
Yeah, because it was stolen money. It was ill-gotten gains. Well, what about the guy? And in fact, I'm not going to go down that road. We got other things to talk about. But it is very frustrating to me to see someone like Luke Rankin continue to pull the wool over people's eyes and convince them that he's something he's not. That he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And his name, his father is still a Democrat, and the family's, long Democrat family. In addition to that, I mean, we've got Carla Schusler here, who I mentioned before. I just got a mailer from her, and I laughed because it was like, Carla Schusler has delivered, and it's got little packages with all the things she allegedly delivered on. And I'm like, well, I don't think constitutional carry passed, so why is that listed on there? You didn't get it passed. How are you taking credit for that? So she's a Democrat, and I've seen the forum. She joined the Horry County Women's Democratic Party Club 2010, and there's multiple pictures of her at Democratic functions. And she was a volunteer for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Now that's the one. I mean, I can get past her being a part of the Democratic Party. I really could.
Yeah, I was a Democrat.
Right. I could get past that. But I have a really hard time getting past she supported Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, it's a tough leap to make back. Say, okay, I'm going to go with President Trump.
Right.
Being a former Democrat myself. I'm in good company. Ronald Reagan was a Democrat.
Yep. I have a lot of friends.
President Trump was a Democrat.
Right.
So that's and especially when you're in a major city like I was. A lot of people register Democrat just so they can vote in the Democrat primary, because the Democrat primary is the big one. And very often what you do is you'd end up voting for the person that you thought the Republican could beat. That's why
Yeah.
that's why there was a lot more registered Democrats up in the Northeast than in a lot of other places. But one thing I wanted to talk about, and it's along the same line, is that I continue to read postings from people on social media. I've read some things in the press, and they continue to blame the political problems of South Carolina, being that we have, the too many rhinos, if you want to call them that.
Mhm.
I just like
Right.
squishy Republicans. And they blame it on people who have come here from big cities, particularly in the Northeast and the Midwest. And especially when it comes to our education system. You keep reading about all of these teachers who have these woke, the woke ideology, and they're putting it on our kids and everything, and they're blaming people from out of town. And I'm here to tell you that if you live here, and even if you're from here, and you think that our state college system isn't producing these liberal teachers, you got another thing coming to you. This has nothing to do with people coming from out of town. This is our own university system
Yeah.
producing these people by the hundreds, and they come right out of college and they've been indoctrinated with this woke ideology, and they bring it right into the classroom. These are not people from New York. These are not people from New Jersey. These are our own kids here who have been, caught up in all of that nonsense that goes on in what they call education on college campuses, which I wouldn't give you. Our education system, I could go off on a rant on that. Our education system right now, my view, is that if you get a college degree right now, it's worth what my high school diploma was worth back in the 70s. That's
I
about the
agree with you.
level of
They're
education that
worthless.
you're going
Yeah.
to get.
You might as well have a basket weaving degree.
Oh, what you get coming out of what I got coming out of 8th grade, with the exception probably of algebra and geometry, everything else is what you know when you get out of high school now. So we're probably,
Yeah.
2 generations. I'm 2 generations away. We've probably stepped back. Our education system stepped back at least 4 years, at least per
Yeah, I
person.
remember when I was a freshman in college, they had remedial math and remedial English for people who didn't have the necessary tools to pass a basic algebra course. And I thought that's not good. How'd you graduate from high school? How did you get into college if you don't
Right.
have that? That's what junior colleges were supposed to be before, not your 4-year schools. So you're right, and I would the only thing I differ with you on, you said by the hundreds or by the thousands, because you got South Carolina, University of South Carolina, you got Coastal Carolina, you've got Watford College rather, you got Clemson University, you got Columbia College. I mean, and that's just to name a few. There are
Right.
so many colleges and universities across the state of South Carolina, and there are virtually none of them producing conservative, American-loving students. The ones who manage to escape these universities, these indoctrination centers with patriotism in their heart, are the rare few. And to that end, I want to note that Ben Shapiro and um, Ron DeSantis both are Harvard alumni, and they both talked about how difficult it was to be students at Harvard because of just the vitriol there was for American anything. And Ron made the point that he goes, I showed up and had on my Florida shirt and my shorts and my flip flops and realized pretty quickly that's not how you dress here. And they both talked about how they were very proud to have escaped Harvard without having changed their philosophical views of the world. And they are definitely the exception, not the norm. So far too many, and I'm sure you've experienced this, but far too many of the students that I taught in public school and in private school, private Christian schools, far too many of those students, I see them, a couple of years after they graduated college, and I don't recognize them. They are so tainted, so jaded towards our nation, towards it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking to see that they've bought into the lie that is perpetuated in our universities.
But that's also why, I think that's why the Democrats come out so strongly against the money following the student and against
Yep.
school choice and
Yeah,
tuition
because they
tax
can't
credits,
control the
because you
indoctrination
can't
anymore.
control it. They have no control over it. I'll be honest with you. What we produced in the Catholic school system in New York City was far superior in most cases to what the public schools produced.
Yeah.
Character. I'm not talking about character. Kids understood. We didn't take a political view, but kids understood the unique quality of this nation and the type of people that it produced. And if you go back and you look at that, you compare what went on in the public schools, and then we won't even get into the money. I think somebody told me that New York is up to $35,000 per student, and Johnny still can't read. But a lot of it
Right.
has to do with the fact that they cannot control the message when the money goes elsewhere, whether it's to a Christian school, a private school, a Montessori, whatever it is.
Right.
They can't control the message. And this has been, look, this is nothing new. This has been going on. This is a long-term plan. They've been doing this probably since the 60s, if not the 50s, that they hatched.
Mhm.
The hard left has been after this. They're very patient people.
Yeah.
And they finally got it to the point where they want to have it. And we're paying the price now. But for those who think that, this is the fault of people from out of town who moved here, this is your own colleges here producing this type of teacher. It's not people coming from the Northeast who are looking for a second career at age 55 that all of a sudden they say, oh, you know what, I'm going to go down and indoctrinate kids down there. It's not what's happening. This is the colleges producing these kids, and we have to look at that as well.
Right. Well, speaking of that, speaking of education, here in South Carolina, a lot of the schools are back in session. And August is the month of back to school.
Yeah.
My son goes back on the 17th of this month, to his chagrin. And so this weekend, which is August 4th, 5th, and 6th, we have what's called tax free. Now, there are 15 states across the country that do this tax free, back to school weekend. There are some limitations. Unfortunately, as you know, I own a small business, Sports Free Play, and I sell sports equipment. That is actually one of the exceptions. You can't come in and buy yourself a new basketball or a new set of cleats and claim it as a school expense. So I can't give you a tax rebate on that. So, but you can go purchase things. You can buy clothing and so on and so forth. One of the things that I thought was noticed was that, and let's see, I got married in 2005. I came here to South Carolina. We were living at the time in Texas, and that's where we were out. He was stationed in Texas, and I came back here to purchase a wedding gown with my mom. Was a big thing, and I didn't realize it was a tax-free weekend. So we go in to buy the wedding dress, and I ended up getting it, for a lot less than I would have paid because it was tax-free weekend, and it was considered clothing, so I didn't have to pay taxes on it. So they frequently refer to that as not the right, and I agree with that. I don't think we should be giving tuxedos and wedding dresses and prom dresses. They shouldn't be getting a tax free for that. That's not school clothing. Um, and and it's great that they have a limit on the price per unit of clothing, $100. If a shirt costs more than $100, you don't need it. A pair of jeans costs more than $100, you don't need it. Tennis shoes cost more than $100, you don't need them. We can, but then again, looking at the price of clothes, we may have to bump that up a little bit soon, John,
Yeah.
because they're
Pretty
getting
soon.
expensive. But so parents can take advantage of that this weekend, August 4th, 5th, and 6th. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Go out and get your kids clothes, school supplies, books, computers. If it's a somehow, I don't know how you distinguish one between the other. It said if it is a computer for your company or a company, I don't know what's the difference between a company computer and a school. I don't get it, John. I'm not, I
Yeah,
don't.
and I was going to say, and we didn't plan this, and I'm not saying this because Shannon has a sporting good store,
Yeah.
but what if you're playing high school sports or middle school sports and you need cleats or you need pads, or because the schools aren't supplying that? So it's part of your education process. I think athletics is a very important part of education, and anything that you need to play should be tax deductible because you want to play, you want to say, hey, look, you want to educate the entire person.
Right.
Curae personalis, that's the Latin term, sorry. Curae
Right.
personalis are going to educate everybody in every way we can. It's got to be a broad education. Athletics is a part of that. So I don't see why that's not part of it. If you can go out and get a tax-free wedding dress and you can't get tax-free cleats, they should probably go back and take a look at that law.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, folks, again, it's
Unless
been
you
an
want to go in the
exciting
wedding,
day.
unless you want to go in the wedding gown business.
Right,
So
exactly. Maybe I should do that. I'm going to switch my not
hang them in
sports
the
anymore. I'm
back,
doing wedding
right
gowns and
next to the
renting
golf clubs.
tuxedos.
Next to the golf clubs, the
Exactly,
wedding dresses.
exactly. Um, but exciting news before we close out today. On Tuesday, we'll be hosting Ken Richardson, who, as we mentioned on Tuesday this week, he's running for mayor in Conway. He's going to come on and talk with us. Unfortunately, he can only come on in the evening at 7 p.m. And John has a commitment. I think you're doing a baseball game or something.
Yeah, unless the Pelicans get rained out.
Okay.
I will. Unfortunately, I will not be able to sit and speak with you and Ken Richardson. I'm sorry, I'm going to miss that.
All right. So special time on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Put it on the calendars, mark it, join us, ask questions. We will certainly be happy to pass those questions on to Mr. Richardson and allow him to answer that. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for tuning in. John, anything else?
Nope.
All right. Godspeed. God bless. And folks, we will see you next time.